Hey everyone, Mikey was asking how we put together tables in LaTeX, so I thought I'd make a quick video. So I've got all of this code if you need to take my preamble. The important bit for today would be to have the book tabs package installed in your preamble. Okay, so make sure you've got that in there. All right, so let's get started. So over here you can see I say that my Mylson table is shown in table 1. And at the moment we've got a caption there. And something to note is that captions go above tables, but under figures. So I'll put it right up the top there. And we're in a table environment, okay, as opposed to a figure environment, which is what we were using last time. Okay, now inside that table environment, we're going to put a tabular environment. And you can see it wants to autocomplete there. So I'll just click tab to autocomplete. And in here, we're going to say how many columns we want in our table. So a really simple table might have 2 columns, one's left aligned, one's right aligned, let's say. And then we're going to put a top rule, so that means it will be a nice thick line across the top of our table. And what are we going to put as our column headings? It might be name and age, let's say. Okay, I'm separating the columns by an ampersand, and then I want to end that line, so I'll use a double forward slash like so. Then I'm going to put a mid rule across here, and I'm going to have Peter and age 38, and I'm going to have Jane, let's say, and age 45. Okay, every time I come to the end of my column in my table, I need to put a double forward slash like so. Then I'm going to put a bottom rule across the bottom, which will be a nice thick line, and this is what it's going to look like. Okay, now, why did I use a left alignment and a right alignment? Well, the idea was that in this column here, I had textual information. And we always, when we're writing, we line things up on the left-hand side. This stuff over here was actually numbers. And numbers we always write on the right-hand side. So for example, suppose Jane was 100, then it would be lined up like so over there. Think about adding up some numbers. You always write aligned numbers, okay? So that's how we're going to do our tables. And then you can tweak this to have more columns as you see fit. Now, in the context of what we're doing in this task, we're differentiating functions and finding stationary points. So we might want to have, some more columns in our table. So maybe we want left, right, right. So we want 3 columns in our table. And we want function. That's the first column heading maybe. And then let's just call it foo for the time being while we work out what we want in there, and bar. Okay, so we'll end that line. Now, what's the function? The function is going to be, is going to be f of x equals, and I'm just making this up, x e to the x, let's say. That should be fine. Okay, so it's not a surge function, but it's kind of similar in structure to a surge function. And in here, I'm just putting in gobbledygook for the time being. So I've got now 3 columns, so I need to separate those with 2 separators here. And then over here, maybe I can just replicate that now. Let's put in that like so. So we should have quite a few rows in our table. And at the moment, that's what it looks like. Okay, so you can tweak exactly what you want in here. What would be useful information? Maybe we want to know the stationary points of these functions. So instead of having foo as our column heading, we could have the x coordinate of the stationary point. And then for the next column heading, so I'll just compile that and just have a look at what it looks like right now. Yeah, not too bad. And then we could put over here the y coordinate of the stationary point. You see the problem that we're going to run into if we do that. we've got an extremely wide table, and there's all this white space that might not be the best use of our energies and what have you. So, or our limitations here. So how could we get around that? Well, we could simply have a shorter column heading. That would be one option. But then which X coordinate and which Y coordinate are we talking about? It's kind of hard to tell. What would be nice is if over the top of that, we had something saying what we're talking about, maybe stationary point. Okay, so how are we going to achieve that? Well, under the top rule, I mean, I'm happy with the function already, so I'll leave that blank and then I'll just put my separator. And then I'm going to have a multi-column setup. So multi-column. And you can see that it's got some options there for me. I actually only need to use 2 of those options. So I'll autocomplete, but I don't need that. I only need 2 of the options. So what am I going to put in there? I'm going to tell how many of the columns I want to join together. It's kind of like merge column in Excel or those types of programs. So I want this multi-column to take up 2 columns, and I want the alignment of whatever's in there to be right in the center. And in fact, I do, of course, need that third one. What am I thinking? I also need to have the title. So I'm going to call it stationary point. So again, what does this mean? This is saying where before there used to be 2 columns, now we want just a single column. The thing that it's going to say in that single column that's now going to be wider is stationary point, and I want that to be right there in the center. I think that's going to look best. We'll see how we go though. Oh, you know what I haven't done? I haven't ended my line there. I just noticed that as I tried to compile it. So it's not going to like that. So that works pretty well, I think. Okay, so then what you would do is kind of just tweak that as required. So maybe this would be xe to the 2x. This would be xe to the 3x. Now, of course, I need to put it in curly brackets. Otherwise, you see, look what's going to happen if I don't. I think it won't work properly. Yeah, it's put the 3 up there. It said, I'm happy putting that up there. And then it thinks, oh, x is going to go down on the baseline. That's because we haven't grouped them up. But you see where I did group them up with the 2x, both went up there. So that's kind of important. Okay, so, well, let's quickly do this now. So the location of the stationary point, well, I've actually got this set up now that I think about it. I put it into Geogebra. So there's x e to the x, the blue function, and the red function is the derivative. So I've got a little slider here and I can change things as I want to. So you can see that when it's xe to the 1x, then the stationary point is going to be there when x equals -1. Okay, so I can put that in here. So this is telling me the x coordinate, so -1. Okay, if we put -1 into our function though, what are we going to get? It's going to be minus e to the -1. So that's -1 over e. And probably that's the best way to report it. So -1 divided by e, like that. I think that's a nice, neat way of doing it. We'll just double check that though. Is it the case that when we put -1 into our function f, we get that? Yeah, well, that looks like, to me, that looks like -1 over e. Yep, that's the number. Okay, so that's what I would do, and I would just keep going. Now, suppose you wanted to also put in just this sort of general case, either kx, that might be fine. And then you would have, you know, the location of the stationary point and everything. But I might want to separate that out from the rest of the guys to say, well, this is like the special general case. How might I achieve that? What you can do is you can come down here and you can add some line space. and that just kind of sets it off by itself. It's still clear and everything, but it allows us to say, oh, that must be something special, and that's why that one's like that. Okay, so hopefully that's enough to get you started with that. The other thing that I've included here in this file, which I'll upload while when I put up the video, I've put this information. Now, you might be saying, well, why isn't this compiling? It's not showing up in the document. The reason why it's not compiling is because it's coming after the end document. Okay, so if we put that here before we end our document, now when we can compile our code, that table should show up as well. And that's the one from the task sheet. So you can put that in. Just one thing to note though, because I'm using the SI unit X commands here, you're going to have to make sure that somewhere in your preamble you've got use package SI unit X. Very useful package for putting in things like minutes, nanograms, milliliters, that sort of stuff. So that's that. And one other thing, I guess, we've got a double question mark here. That's just saying, well, I haven't built my database properly yet. And just a couple of compiles and you should be able to get that all working.